Welcome to the Unwashed Asses, episode 108, recorded for Sunday, April 28th, 2019. I don't know why I go from monster truck voice to 1920s newsy voice. But here we are, doing voices. Hey, how's it going? Hi. Been a while. But let me tell you about what a gigantic fucking idiot I am. Because transitions are hard, and I have a story to tell. So this weekend, plan was, I'm going to be super productive. I'm going to get a lot of shit done. I'm going to get some shows recorded, going to get some artwork up, maybe sell some stuff. And that all kind of went to naught because it devolved into playing nothing but fucking old video games. old fucking video games. And then bringing a heap of trouble upon myself. So I know you're dying to hear about the video games part of it, so I guess, we'll start with the savory bit first. And yeah, no, I'm at a point with Destiny where I've kind of done everything, so I'm just waiting for new content. And I was browsing through my Steam library. I'm like, all right, well, what can I play? Because Thursday's usually like my decompress day. Let me find something to play for a couple hours, and then I can get to work on a project. And I had Sniper Elite Nazi Zombies, I think. Anywho, I purchased it back in 2013 and played like 2 hours of it, and then never touched it again. And I remember this very keenly because when I bought it, I'm like, oh, it looks like Left 4 Dead. I'm a big fan of like the Call of Duty Zombies mode. And I just, back in that time era, I was super big on zombies in general. Like, oh yeah, I fucking love them. And I like the atmosphere. I like the setup because the idea is, it's Nazis and zombies. There's not much more to it. You play one of 4 survivors and you have to make your way through World War II era Germany and fight the zombies that Hitler has resurrected with his lunacy-filled Plan Z. That's it. There's no more, no less. It's like getting, mixing peanut butter and jelly or peanut butter and chocolate. It's like you can't really go wrong with Nazis and zombies because what do people love, killing droves of? Nazis and or zombies, so why not mesh the two together? And this was a period in time where both were, fairly well regarded in terms of killability. So I bought the game, and my computer at the time, which I think it was, I still had an AMD build, and I had only a dual core. I think I capped it out at, I had just upgraded to a 64-bit OS, but I still only had like 8 gigs of RAM in it. An old spinning drive. It was a terabyte, 7,200 RPM. And then I had an AMD 4550 graphics card, which could barely play games like Terra, which were hot and new at the time. This was back when I reviewed MMOs. And so I was punishing this rig and my internet connection, downloading a gigantic game every week and playing through it. And so I didn't have a whole lot of time for games I wanted to play. But this one, it struck my fancy. It was relatively inexpensive, so I grabbed it and then I played 2 hours and never touched it again until Thursday. Thursday rolls around, I'm like, oh, let's give it a whirl. I have a machine that can run it 10 times over. Let's do it. So the night engine hums with, menace as I sacrifice at this 6-year-old game. Like, all right, do what you will here. And I go and I tweak all the settings, and I'm going through and I'm playing the first level, and I see a buddy's online, and this buddy who has been dying for me to do a fucking podcast about him, he has interests in only a few select things, most notably history and war. I'm like, all right, we have a group of 4 that we've been trying to get him to play something together with us, and the best we've come up with is like fucking stick fight. even things like Destiny, he won't try. If it's not a combat sim, he's not down, which is fine. You know, like you're into what you're into. He knows what he's about, which I can respect that, even if I don't agree with it. And I'm like, all right, well, he fucking loves Nazis. Let's give this a whirl. And you know, it's only $15 on Steam, so sure, why not? He grabs it, and we start playing through the levels together. Like I say, levels. We keep dying at the last stronghold on the first level, over and over again, and having good fun with it. And then another buddy in that group pops up, and he's like, "Hey, let's peer pressure him." And so we successfully peer pressure him, and now there's 3 of us in a 4-person co-op game. There's nobody else playing this game because the servers are long dead. I'm surprised they still have like dedicated servers running for it, unless like I was unwittingly playing host, which could have been the case. But no, ours disappeared as my friends and I gunned down zombies one after the other. We ended up having to lower the difficulty, which while it, you know, because it will add in more enemies the number of times the number of people, it builds up upon itself. And while, yeah, you can kill a zombie easy enough with a shot to the heart, and you're to blame, they can resurrect themselves, so you really have to work for that headshot. But the big problem was the special zombies, which pop up. Notably, like the big beefy boys with the miniguns that take only headshots to kill. By headshots, I mean on the lowest difficulty, it's still like a dozen rounds you're pumping into their head before they die, and they're pretty deadly themselves, especially when you're dealing with an onslaught of other zombies. But no, played that. That was a lot of fun. And then after everybody got off, because it was just orgasmic playing a Nazi zombie shooting game. Like, it's the equivalent of like a cheap action movie. Yeah, it's not stellar in any one aspect. Like, the controls are a little bit janky. The graphics, while, you know, passable, they're not gonna, you know, blow you away. The game's really good at setting atmosphere. But again, nothing super special here. The plot is just, I explained it in one sentence. But it's that co-op experience of sitting down with friends and playing it that really makes it pay off. And so when they got off, I popped back on. All right, I haven't streamed in a while. Let me try this. And I had been having problems streaming in general, but I had been trying it with higher end games like Anthem and Destiny, which are more resource intensive, and in cases of Anthem, the game's poorly optimized, so it just doesn't want to run well to begin with, let alone stream it. But this, it's kind of perfect for test runs. It's a 6-year-old game. It's not very demanding. I can do this. So I fire up OBS, I get all the configurations set, and immediately I just start dropping frames, just start dropping them. And for those, I don't know, I don't want to say ignorant, but if you're not in the know, if you're not, this isn't something you're interested in, essentially what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to tell my computer, hey, not only run this game, but also capture the video and audio and send it out over the internet, which requires a decent upload on top of a machine that can not only render the video, like the game itself, but then render a video of it and then kick that out. In the settings I have it set are, 1080 and 60 frames a second, because I like nice video fidelity, even if I can't really pick up the audio, because I have bad ears. Anywho, my computer should be able to handle this easily, because before I upgraded my solid state drive, I was able to do it with Destiny, no problem. So I'm like, all right, something seriously fucky here. So I spend quite a few hours testing. Like, all right, is it something on my side? Is it, are my drivers up to date? Is it something essentially wrong with the computer? Because while it's a brand new computer, I'm going to be pissed, but it's something that I can relatively easy that I can probably fix. And OBS, I will say, has a fantastic suite of tools available, like, so you can kind of troubleshoot these things. And especially if you do the integration with the Twitch service, you can do a bandwidth test. So it won't broadcast, which is what I had been previously doing, just like broadcast after broadcast, change a setting, because you can't change settings on the fly with a broadcast. You have to end the broadcast, change your settings, and then broadcast again. And if you have things like social alerts turned on, you're going to be blasting out on Twitter, Facebook, whatever services you have hooked up. And it gets annoying real fast. But with the bandwidth test, it kills all those alerts, and you're not like producing a live stream, but you can still test. And there are other tools that I found that allow me to track essentially how my hardware performance is, what my network performance is doing. And then that's when I found that I was dropping packets, not at the encoding bit, but at, the actual kick them out to the internet part. And so that tells me, all right, there's an issue with my network. Now, the internet service I have, reliably, I should be getting around 200 by 10. And I was getting about 200 by 5, and I thought, okay, that's all right. I can live with 5 up for streaming purposes, but I know it should be higher, but I blamed it on the crap apartment wiring. When we moved in, I made it a point to, go through and redo the wiring. But I've always noticed that there's like fluctuations in the quality of the signal, and I had thought it was because of where the wiring feeds down into the parking garage, where I don't have a key to get access to that room, and management has been kind of hesitant to let me into it. It's like, I have the company vehicle parked in front of my building at all times, when I'm not working. I have my employee badge, like I work for this company, this is what I do. Please get me access, to this room so I can take a look and make sure things are good there. But so Thursday disappeared because of playing games and then because of testing. And then Friday rolls around, and I had some things to do that morning, but I got home and I'm like, well, I was going into a manic uptick, like where I was feeling really high energy. I was trying to be super productive, and I'm like, you know what, now's a good time. Nobody's home. I don't have the boy over. Let me really dig in and see if I can figure out where my internet problem truly lies. Like, again, downstream's totally fine, streaming and all that, but it's only when I want to use the upstream portion of it. So I go and I get my tools and I get my meter and I start testing, and I find out that I have burr issues. Burr is my bit error rate. So essentially, the way cable systems work is that the data that comes across is essentially verified and then corrected if there are errors. And we have the pre-burr, so that's the signal coming to you, and then the post-burr is the corrected bits. And so the number is exponentially large, like it's gigantic for how well the system can correct itself. However, I was getting pre-burr, and pre-burr, again, you can kind of work with it as long as your post-burr is fine, but here I was seeing a detrimental effect. So I was convinced it's got to be something in the MDU, but I went and talked to my landlord again, and they're like, oh no, sorry, maintenance has to let you down there, and they're busy getting a place ready for a showing, and I leave at noon today, so we'll call you next week. It's like, fuck, okay. So I go find where the line comes into the apartment, I test that out, and everything looks fine. Like, okay, signal's out of spec, it's whacked out, it's fucked up. There's 2 levels we're concerned about, like in our particular market, where signal should be sitting at to guarantee good service. It utilizes a cliff effect, where as long as you have the signal between these ranges, the system will correct and do everything it can to make sure everything's perfect. Outside that, you're kind of fucked. So the 2 signals that we're concerned about, the signals coming to the house is between a negative 12 decibels and a positive 12. The return signal we want between a positive 35 and 50. And I'm coming in extremely high on the return, where immediately I'm at like a 48. So if I want to use something like a passive splitter, which is ideal, you only want to use passive stuff, because it's splitting the signal, that adds 3.5 decibels per leg, so that immediately puts me up past that 50 threshold. I'm right there at 51.5 ideally, but we have to take into account like cable length and whatnot. So I can't use a passive splitter, which sucks. And again, part of why I want to get into this closet is, like, if I can correct the signal at the origin point, then I can work better in the apartment. So because I can't use a passive splitter, I have to use something called an amplifier. And what the amplifier does is, by plugging into power, it's able to raise the signal back up so that we don't see signal loss. It's what we call an active splitter. And the reason we don't like active splitters is, one, they require power, which means then they can fail. And two, they tend to fail faster than passive splitters because there is actual voltage running through it at that point, and it can generate things like noise, which is excessive signal, which then feeds back into the system and can cause other problems like packet loss, which is what I'm already seeing, and tiling. So we typically don't like to use amplifiers unless we're in a situation where either A, you can't correct the signal enough, or B, the customer has so many pieces of equipment that passive splitter would just degrade the signal to the point of non-usability, so that the amp comes into play there. But in my case, I only have two pieces of equipment, the DVR and then the modem. So these are things that I should be able to run a passive, but because, again, high-end's fucked up, I have to use the amp. Don't want to use it, but I have to. And I can hear people cognizant of cable arguing, well, no, you can push it past that 50. But again, I'm trying to make things as pristine as possible because I'm already experiencing a problem. I can't, yeah, it will still technically work, but I want it to work as best as possibly can. So in this instance, I go ahead and I begin testing every single point, and I'm finding, all right, no problem. Replace every fitting, replace the amplifier, replace the jumpers, and I'm like custom making everything and get it all hooked up. And I'm like, all right, well, let's get crazy here, and I'll even make a new Ethernet jumper from the modem to the router. Like, I'll physically make one, and I'll make one from the router to the desktop. So I get all that done. That's a couple hours of work there. That just, rerunning tests and changing it all out. And my upload's fine, but my fucking download is slow. It's only like 95, and that's at best. So when I try to run it off the wireless, I'm getting like less than 1 meg down. Like, the fuck did I just do? How did I fuck this up? So on the Discord, I'm talking to my coworkers. I'm like, here's what I've done. Here's what's going on. And they're offering all these suggestions, which really, like, if it was just me, I'd be, losing my shit at this point. But it's nice to have somebody to bounce ideas off of, especially when they're knowledgeable in an area like that you work in. And so we're kind of just spitballing, and it's like, all right, well, let's break it down, back to basics, run your outlet straight to the device and then test off that. Okay, that's fine. Let's reintroduce the amp. Okay, that's fine. All right. Let's try to bypass from the amp to your bypass the router, go modem and computer, and then that's a problem. Like, okay, I assume I have a bad Ethernet cable then, and I just made it. And I don't have a pre-made length that's, it's about a 10-foot run. And I don't want to rearrange the living room to take care of this problem. So I'm like, I'll live with this. I can order an Ethernet cable at a later date. But I'm still seeing really bad wireless performance. We come back from that awkward pause into the story that I'm trying to remember from a little bit ago. No, where was I? So it was bad wireless speed. Ethernet's fucked, but I know that's just a cable. I can replace a cable. At this point, we've confirmed things are good out of the modem, so the only point between the modem and any of my other devices is going to be the router itself. And the router I had been kind of fucking with a bit at trying to monitor network traffic and take care of logs. And the logs have been telling me I've been receiving not necessarily dedicated denial of service attacks, but just denial of service attacks. And that's giving me the IP addresses, and I'm I can ping them, I can do trace routes, but trace routes inevitably fail out. And what this means essentially is that there is somebody on the internet that is sending large amounts of traffic towards my router and trying to bring it offline. It could be something malicious. Actually, typically anytime it's an instance of that, it is something malicious. And my first thought's well, Destiny is used peer-to-peer connection and denial of service attacks are rampant, but I've not noticed the problem itself. It's only popping up in these logs, and I'm not sure where, these IPs are originating from. So I do some digging and I find out one of them is from Netgear's own servers. And it's like, the router manufacturer is supposedly trying a denial of service attack on its own equipment. Like, that doesn't make sense. I have auto update turned off, but something keeps talking back to it. So, and you know what? I can't fix this, and or I probably can fix this, but it's not worth the time. So let me, you know, we're just gonna factory reset everything and just back up my config file of the router, reset it, and then just reconfigure everything. And something I noticed with this is it didn't reset the firmware, which it typically does, or at least it used to. It's been a while since I've had to factory reset a router. So the firmware stayed up to date, which I guess is kind of nice, unless it was a firmware update that was causing my problem. But as we're going to find out here, that was not the case. So factory reset, I don't bother really configuring too many other settings. I'm like, you know, let's just keep it basic. Let's just change, you know, the SSID, the password, and the login credentials, and then we will try again. And let's, you know, take it a step further because of my paranoid brain. Let's change those credentials from what they were originally, just in case there was a piece of rogue equipment on the network, which again, when I examined the network and went through the logs, there wasn't anything there that shouldn't have been there, and nothing had connected recently. So, at least not in the time frames that I was seeing for the service attacks. So it's like something's not adding up, but it ended up, I think, just being an issue within the router itself, because the reset was complete and then my speeds began pulling A-okay. So then I kind of put everything back together. I don't bother cleaning up the wiring like I usually do. I'm very, very anal about the wiring and making everything look nice and neat, and you know, it's something I take pride in, especially when it comes to work. But not here. I'm like, nope, it's working. At this point, fucking everything relating to the internet is black magic. I'm not going to touch it any further. It's working. And I went ahead and did several bandwidth tests through OBS, and everything was fine. Oh, thank fucking Christ. And it continues to be fine. Like Friday night, we did Friday Night Smite with Mezzafesto and Sapper Woody, and 4-hour stream. Not so much as a single packet lost. I loved it. It was phenomenal. It was exactly what I was after. I was super happy with how everything itself panned out. It alleviated a lot of my stress and frustration, but it also ate up a lot of my Friday, because then I got that all taken care of by like 2 o'clock. Then I make lunch, and then 3 o'clock Rachel gets home, and then we have to take the cats to the vet. And then from there, it was just like kind of one thing after the next. We watched Infinity War, because the next day we were going to go see Endgame. So like my Thursday and Friday were shot. And then Saturday just kind of became another lazy day with another friend, where we installed Left 4 Dead 2, because somehow got in the topic of it in the Discord chat of Steam has like these weird trading cards and wallpapers and whatnot that you get from playing games, and like, I don't know what these do. I don't give a shit about it, but it gives you the option to sell them. I'm like, oh, well, that's interesting. And they don't really sell for a whole lot, you know, 3 cents to, I think the highest selling one that I had was like 21 cents. I'm like, all right, let's go through and like old school WoW auction house this shit. And so I listed a lot of it, and it's still selling, but I've made $1 off of it. And I was asking, like, what the hell is all this? And they kind of explains essentially just that. It's trading cards, and people can collect all the cards in the game, and you get like these unique badges, but it doesn't really do anything. It's just collecting for the sake of collecting. Okay, well, I'm not missing out on anything. And, you know, it takes a little bit of time, but I can make, you know, it like, it wasn't any consequential amount of money, but I still like getting like the little email notification, like, you sold this. You know, I was like, hey, entrepreneurship. God damn it. I have that entrepreneurial spirit, and, you know, I'm seizing hold of my destiny by selling digital goods. But that reminded me, like, oh yeah, I had planned on modding the shit out of Left 4 Dead 2, because this was another game around the time of Sniper Elite where it's like, I have this computer, it runs it okay enough, but not great, and the Left 4 Dead community is just full of wonderful modders, and Like, I was going to mod the hell out of this game with, like stormtroopers as the zombies and lightsabers and all this other shit. And since then, they've released just a plethora of content, and usually, super weird anime girl, pervy shit. But the one person went so far as like, oh, we're going to mod in the Titanfall weapons and pilots. I'm like, yes! I get to shoot stormtroopers as Titanfall pilots, and there's a lot of like texture and lighting fixes and all this other stuff. And my buddy's like, oh, hey, there's this really cool Silent Hill campaign that I used to play. And Silent Hill was always one of those games that scared the shit out of me, so I never played it too much. And you were one of two camps, kind of like Mortal Kombat or Street Fighter. You were either Resident Evil or Silent Hill, and I fell into the Resident Evil camp. So, I had played it a couple times, but again, it was too scary for me. I couldn't play it. And I was always intrigued by the lore of it. I loved the movie to pieces. So I'm like, all right, absolutely. And so we get it all configured. And the idea is essentially like you're playing through a variation of Silent Hill 1. They've recreated essentially each section. You've got the town, the school, the hospital. You go down in the sewers, and that was a lot of fun. And like it, I don't know, I guess the weekend was just kind of refreshing in the sense of, like playing games with friends and not necessarily playing the latest and greatest games like Friday Night Smite. We just played Smite and it was fun. We did extremely well. And it's weird to see my two groups of friends, like the people that I've known since I was a teenager, meeting with the people that I've only known for a couple years now and seeing how they get along, and it works very well. And I don't know. It was a good cathartic release and relaxing. So, that all that kind of combined, my weekend got waylaid, but we're back and we're getting stuff taken care of. And I'm keen now to start streaming more. And if Sean, the guy who wants me to do a podcast about him, would take the fucking hint and pop on after Game of Thrones is off tonight, we can, do a spoiler show. That might be fun. Huh, Sean, who won't answer my fucking requests to get on the podcast despite incessantly badgering me about it. Mister, I can take it. You can be honest. You can tell me about what shitty person I am, or, glorify me as a walking god. No, we don't do that here. If you want to be in the spotlight, you need to step into the spotlight with me. I'll hold your hand. Not in person, though, because that weirds me out, and I have, commitment issues and intimacy problems, but metaphorically. And we'll talk about the thrones and the games that they're played with, because yeah. So that's gonna wrap it up. If you have your own internet woes and tales of days wasted trying to fix problems, write the show. theunwashedasses at gmail.com. Again, theunwashedasses at gmail.com. And of course, this year, help the show grow. Tell a friend. Let them know they can get TUA wherever they get podcasts. TUA or the Unwashed Asses. I guess both are equally interchangeable, unless you're on iTunes, and at that point, it's like, no, we don't like profanity. No, you've got to clean it up and censor yourself. But that's going to wrap it up. We'll talk to you next time. Blood for the blood god.